All right.
Welcome, Milena. How are you?
I'm great. How are you today?
We're good. We're good. I'm personally very thrilled to dive into what you do because your crusade has your big crusade has become a small crusade of mine over the years, and I think because a lot of our audience, as we were talking about off air, is practicing or aspiring health coaches. These are people in the health entrepreneur space, and we know entrepreneurship has its a host of spiritual, mental, emotional struggles and challenges with it. So what we're going to talk about with you today is, I think, really important for entrepreneurs and anybody who's living in the modern world to connect to. So I'm just being very vague and foreshadowing it. I'm actually going to throw it to you to share the origin of what you do right now. So give us the full backstory, 3 to 5 minutes, sort of speaker bio.
Certainly, and that's exactly what my journey has been. It's entrepreneur and health coach. And what I started as an entrepreneur, I worked in marketing for years. I worked for companies. I ran my own agency. One thing led to another. I was hustling, and then that completely affected my health. I was dealing with chronic stress, and eventually I came to Baja to do a 10-day digital detox retreat on my own, not because it was what I was planning on doing, but because there was no internet, excuse me, back then here. And so one thing led to another. I found the Human Potential Coaching Institute. And all of a sudden I thought, this could be my next career. This could be open up more opportunities to me. So I was very interested in the program. I had no intentions of coaching whatsoever. It was just mainly doing it for myself. But I gained so much clarity and complete transformation with everything, personally, with my health, with my vision, with my connected with my purpose. And so Unhustle was born. And Unhustle is my latest venture, and it's a startup. So going back to the entrepreneur that I am from the age of 7. So Unhustle is basically a lifestyle design movement to stand up to this hustle culture, this toxic business, 24/7, always on mentality, and realize that we can go through life with so much more ease and flow and freedom, and making actually more money by doing less. And so I started Unhustle as a movement to inspire other people to reassess their life and redefine their own success.
Woo, I love it.
Woo. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So the last thing you said is the first thing that went ding, 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 because I want to know more about that. This whole idea of make more money by doing less. Can you expound on that just a little, or maybe a lot?
Yeah, I mean, it's very counterintuitive, and it's the one thing that obviously gets people, especially when they hear Unhustle, they think, well, self-care. Certainly self-care is a part of it. They think well-being. Certainly well-being is part of it. But then in all of this letting go and finding that quiet time and finding the stillness, you get so many more creativity, you get so much more clarity, and you figure out what's the most important thing to do. And you can do it in the least amount of time because you want to go play. So I know it's very counterintuitive, but that's how it's been since then. It's amazing. I think we're in such a rush all the time. We're just go, 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 that we can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. We can't see through the forest. And so when you actually, and most of us nowadays work in some kind of brain power capacity. We're on our computers, we're on our phones all the time. And that's not when you get the best ideas. So by allowing yourself to, go for a hike, go for a swim, go for a walk, read a book, do nothing for a day, the doing less part, all of a sudden you get very, very much more clear on what your priorities are. You get more clear on what makes you happy. So you identify your values, which is a big component in this whole Unhustle movement, is connecting with your values, connecting with what makes you happy, putting a lot of focus on your mental, emotional, spiritual well-being. So obviously when you're in a high performing state, when you feel good, when you're vibrating on a higher energy level, then you can get so much more clear as to where your goals want to go with from a business objective. And that's how it works. It's actually, you do less and you make more money.
It's so counterintuitive. Hey, and I know that your background is in the sort of the busy world of marketing and advertising, which is the background, was where I came from as well. That's my background. And it was funny how that industry for some reason prided itself on just being hectic and chaotic. And it's like, so it's a really big mindset shift. But it's so interesting that you say, like when you sit in the stillness and just kind of bring things down, then you have the opportunity, the mental and spiritual space to get clear on what makes you happy. Now, where I struggle with that, and maybe some people listening can struggle, is when after decades and decades and decades of hustling, when I sit still and think about what makes me happy, it's like doing absolutely nothing would make me really happy. And I don't think like there's got to be like that. There's got to be some way to bridge that, right? So how does somebody go from like where the big hustle to like I don't want to do anything anymore, I'm fatigued out of everything, to then pulling back to like a semi-productive state?
Yeah, I mean, everything in moderation, including moderation. If you, for us, for most of us, it's become really tough to actually do nothing, because we're so conditioned to constantly be doing. And when we're not doing anything, we reach our phone. So we actually, that ability to stand still, it actually does not come easy. So you're one of the exceptions in this case that you actually crave that doing nothing, because most people for most people, doing nothing means still doing something. And trust me, I see it here. I see it where I am right now. So this is a little, let's call it vacation destination for people. So people come here to do nothing and chill, and they still overcommit themselves to doing stuff. They want to fit everything in. They want to go get their yoga session in and go get their mountain bike in and all of this stuff. So it's still the go, do. So it's very difficult. Now, let's say you just say, I want to do nothing, right? You just want to do nothing. That's what my body needs. That's what my mind needs. You do nothing for a little bit, sure. But then you would want to do something meaningful and something that has purpose and something that makes you feel good at the end of the day. So you will eventually swing back to doing something. It may not be what you originally started with. That's how my career change evolved. Basically, I went from, doing digital marketing, MBA to digital marketing to working with celebrities, Fortune 1000 companies, go. I pulled back. It took me years. It took me a couple of years to figure out, what am I doing now? What's my next purpose? And it's not that I was doing nothing in that time, but I allowed myself to do nothing and be still on a more regular basis. So this is where having a mindfulness practice comes in, having a meditation practice. Just taking some time and going out and walking in nature, connecting with nature was really big for me. Taking time to cook some meals and connect with friends. To me, that was still doing nothing from a perspective that I wasn't on my computer, I wasn't on my phone, I wasn't thinking about work. Now, let me give you a little bit of a background story. When we came here, and I'm currently in Baja. So when we came here 5 years ago, I was doing, I was really into the digital marketing world and the go. I was very much doing yoga. I was, doing my hiking because I live in Lake Tahoe the other half of the year. So I was very connected with nature still. But in the midst of that, I still wasn't finding that stillness and that mindfulness. When we came here, I tried to learn to kiteboard. And that is the scariest thing I have ever done. Wow. And because it's so scary, I was thinking I'm either going to die or I have to stop thinking about everything else. I have to stop thinking. And that moment was the first mindfulness real moment that I had. And all of a sudden, I was out in the ocean and my kite was floating up in the air and my body was floating in the ocean. I was starting to connect with that ocean and the salt water was around me and I started hearing the birds chirping around me. And that was the moment that I said, there's more to my life and to my purpose than adding more noise to an already noisy world. it still, from that moment, it took me a couple of years to figure out what that is. But I decided that having a consistent mindfulness practice, having more of a meditation practice would be critical in this situation. And so the doing nothing part, I don't, no one's most people that are listening to this, they're not gonna like go to a monastery, become a monk, right?
Right.
So we're still living in a very modern society world.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody can take 5-10 minutes in the morning and sit in silence. And that's the doing nothing part.
Yeah.
And I think out of that doing nothing part for a little bit of time every day, you build that habit of just letting your mind wander and just connecting more with your values and what makes you happy, and eventually finding what you want to do in life, and then you go back to doing. But it's a fine balance, right? And we all search for that balance word. But I think whether you're doing completely nothing or going full on, neither one of these is healthy. I think you need to find that healthy medium that works for you, and everybody's going to be different, of course.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Did that answer that question?
It does. Yeah, it's true. You're exactly right that there's some middle ground in between doing everything and doing nothing. That's what we're striving for here. But I just feel like, that pendulum swing, we see that a lot in health coaching. It's like, I'm unhealthy. I'm going to go on the world's most extreme diet and try to fix my health. And it's like something in that gray area in the middle is really the sweet spot. But something about the human condition, or maybe it's because we've been conditioned to hustle, that tells us that we either have to be on or we're off. We're black or we're white. And that is such a challenge to overcome when you're coaching people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, everything extreme, including hustle, including diets, including exercise. We're human beings. We're not in that state. We need common sense. We need enough sleep. We need enough water. I showed you where I lived for 5 years in our Airstream. That made me realize how little we really need to be happy. Because at the end of the day, falling asleep under the stars, walking barefoot on the ground, being connected with nature, getting some exercise, eating some healthy food, having some friends around, and doing something with purpose that puts a smile on your face. What else do you need? All this other stuff, all this noise, that's just craziness that we're doing to ourselves. And we need to say enough is enough. But everybody's going to be different. We can drink bulletproof coffees and live on nootropics, but does that really... And I'm coming from the Bulletproof Institute. Yeah. Nothing against bulletproof coffee. I just made one this morning. But I mean, we're not machines. And that applies to everything, to exercise, to diet. We keep coming up with the latest trends and the 7-minute workouts and, just common sense. I think common sense with everything.
As a health coach, I totally resonate with what Erin said. A lot of my clients come to me after years of either being on a diet or eating like garbage. On a diet, even sometimes when they're on the diet, they're still eating like garbage, right? Depends on the diet, but they're either dieting or not dieting, and it's one extreme or the other, right? And I find the same thing with movement and exercise. I own a gym, and people will be like, when I ask them about their, fitness experience, it's oftentimes, I'll take up whatever and then go on vacation and everything falls off the rails and I just don't go back. And they go through these periods of activity, inactivity. So this is really common with our health coaching clients. It's either one extreme or another. And it is a challenge from a coaching perspective to help people understand that this is something that you need to be able to buy into for life. Right? That can make you feel good for the long term. And it's a challenge, from a coaching perspective and some of what you learned through your training. When I was looking at your website, I saw a piece of this puzzle that I'm like, I know I've got to do it. And I keep working my way towards it. And then I end up, so the thing I saw was simplify, right? Keep things simple. And I always manage to, I'm trying to simplify, trying to cut things down. And then just complicate the hell out of it again, and so I'd love for you to speak to that a little bit, kind of from a coaching perspective, on what kind of coaching dynamics or strategies are helpful there on helping people find that middle ground.
Yeah, it's really, really difficult because we've overcomplicated our lives, and we continue to do that. And technology and information overload are a big part of it. And from a personal experience, I went through all that path. You know, I was the one getting up at 6 a.m. in the morning, hitting the gym and doing an hour workout, thinking that's what it's the healthy thing to do. I no longer do that. I was the one that went to all the diets because I suffered for 20 years. I suffered from a digestive stomach problems. And I went to Western doctors, Eastern doctors. I tried paleo, I tried elimination. I mean, I went through all the diets. And to be honest with you, the one thing that actually fixed it all was meditation. It was that slowing down. It was that finding that mind gut balance and eliminating stress, because it was stress that was causing it all. So on a simplifying perspective, it's very difficult to do because I used to be in marketing. So I know that everybody out there is trying to get your attention.
Right.
It's click, buy, scroll. We have the latest trend. You're going to accomplish this by doing this. And it's promises, 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 promises. And so I am originally from Bulgaria. And when I took the time to really say, what's going on here? And I took the time to think back to how I grew up. And I grew up with a very simple childhood, eating very simple food, getting my exercise, not necessarily, I was a ski racer, but I wasn't necessarily like hardcore training. My exercise was going out and playing, you know, running or riding my bike. And so I started to incorporate all of these simple, basic things back into my life. I've never looked better than I do now. And it's got nothing to do with trends or diets or, you know, it's just going back to the simplicity of what we need. And Mark Sisson talks about this a lot. It was actually in his book that for the first time I read about how to get a more effective workout that made me think, wait a minute. So my 1 hour in the gym is really not that great. And I started to question it. It was back then when I started doing, oh, maybe I need to go back to sprinting. I can do that. Now, simplifying is not an easy thing because we're conditioned to buy more. We're conditioned to read more and follow more. So part of it's mindset. Part of it is figuring out what works for you. And what works for me, it's going to be completely different than what works for you. So from a simplifying perspective, I think a lot of what I did was just cut out everything and cut out of most things and realized just what was going to make sense for me to do. And let's say exercise on an exercise level, I vary my workouts because I'm not one for routines, but again, it's going to be different for everybody. So I think people need to find out what type of movement, I call it more so movement than exercise, what type of movement works for them. And then can they really establish some kind of a consistency practice with it. I think the consistency is the key that we're missing. We go for these different trends and now it's Peloton and now it's TRX and, you know, but what works for you really? Yeah. So, and how much of that can you actually do outside? Because we spend so much time out indoors, you know, 93% of our time we're living indoors. So as much time as you can spend outside is my motto. So getting that, you know, connection with nature, being outside, getting some clean air, getting your phone turned off is the biggest one. And if you just do that, if you just turn off your phone for an hour, you'll start simplifying your life because we're just bombarded with so much information. We just, you know, Facebook, I mean, I know how the algorithms work. I know how the ads work. Everybody knows that, you know, you talk to a friend about something and then you see an ad for that coming up on your phone. So, you know, we're being hyper targeted with advertising and, but we are in control of it. Technology is great. It's allowing us to do this video. And at the same time, it's a little bit overwhelming. So from a simplifying perspective, if you could take some time away from the phone and eat basic foods that are not processed, not packaged, and go back to what your grandma would cook. If your grandma cooked, my grandma cooked, but just that's I think the most the most common sense approach. Get some movement, get some exercise, keep it simple.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to tell you, I'm feeling very triggered by this conversation, but like in a super good way. This is just everything you're saying is just so spot on. You know, and there's lots of things I want to dive into. Like I want to dive into some of the details around like your awakening that you had when you were kite surfing, and you know, this whole idea around you know, how this whole idea around how to have this awakening or have this moment where you realize that there's something more different for you. But one thing that was interesting that you mentioned is when you were living, like you lived in the Airstream before you're able to build a dwelling. So you lived in the Airstream for like 5 years, and you said that that helped you to realize what little really you need. So it's like, is that a place to start? Is it a good idea to start by auditing everything in your life and being really honest about like, not only like your possessions, which I think is probably a good thing to do. Like let's minimize our possessions even, because that right off the bat, if you recognize that you need fewer possessions, then you recognize that you need less money, and you don't need to buy things. You don't need to be on trend or on, you know, like that treadmill begins to slow when, so how do we do this? Do we start with an audit? And how do you recommend we do that?
You know, the best thing you can do, the easiest thing you can do, it's what I did, is you start by decluttering your wardrobe.
Mm-hmm.
Just take 2 hours, take all of your clothes out, all of them, take everything out of your wardrobe, and create 3 piles, just 3 piles. One is to keep, one is no, and one is a maybe. And just pick up every piece of clothing and say, do I love it? If I saw this on a rack right now, would I buy it? Or is this something I'm hanging on to like for a special occasion, for that one meeting that, you know, never comes, or that special occasion? So I got rid of bags of clothes. It was a process. And that triggered me to take a look at the rest of the house. Mm-hmm. And my husband and I went on this journey of room by room, just pick everything up. Do we love it? Do we care for it? Does it bring us joy? And I'm not a minimalist by any standards. I mean, maybe a little bit in the area, but I'm not like, oh, you just need 25 items in your life. You know, I like to have toys, you know, I like simple, but also if I'm going to buy something, I buy something that is expensive and I would love and cherish for years. So that's definitely a good start, because the wardrobe is the first thing you go to every morning, and it just takes it takes decisions. You know, you're starting to use your brain power, and I don't want to use my brain power for clothes. And I actually dropped down my standard a lot because I realized it's more about here than actually what we put on the outside.
That's what I was going to say, like something about the wardrobe, in addition to what you said, which is it's the first thing you kind of engage with in the morning in terms of like your material possessions, but also so much of your identity is wrapped up in this, like this false identity, like, oh, I have designer bags. I guess that means I'm successful because I have this ridiculous shoe collection. But it's like at the core, you know, I'm not the type of person who actually cares about shoes. And at the core, that's not really authentic or in integrity with who I am. I'm just playing the role of a woman with an expensive wardrobe, right? It's something like this identity piece, you know?
Yeah, it's huge, especially in US culture. And look, I used to work with celebrities, so I had to dress up, and it looked the part. I mean, most of them were in the fitness world, so there's still a little bit of, you know, I wasn't like in finance or, you know, so a little bit different from how I had to dress up. But I still liked my designer clothes, and I went down that road, and I realized, you know, is that really an addiction, or is it, because it's a little different in Europe where I'm from. Certainly they have nice clothes and they go to meetings, but they have 10 things, where in the US we have, you know, 50 things. Yeah. So it's a little bit of a cultural thing, I think. But I would rather, again, have something that I can put on, 3 pieces that I can put on and look nice, and eliminate the 30 that just clutter your wardrobe, clutter your mind. And it's a magical thing what happens, because all of a sudden have you ever, I mean, you ladies, you probably go to your wardrobe and you have clothes and you go, I have so many clothes and I have nothing to wear. right?
Right.
Happens all the time, right? And that used to happen to me all the time. And when you eliminate a lot of the clothes, now it's like, yeah, well, it's this and this.
Right. That's so smart. I mean, first of all, I'm moving. So this is the best time to simplify all that stuff. Clean crap out. And so I've started to do that, but and I have from year to year thrown out bags of clothes, and I still have entirely too much. And when I still have like all my old work clothes from when I was in finance, I still have a bunch of those suits. I'm like, why am I holding on to these things? I never wear them for whatever reason. Like I'm like, oh, maybe Mia, my daughter will want it someday, or my sister. And I'm like, you know what? By the time they're going to want it, they're going to be out of date anyway. Just get rid of it. So that's going to be, I am inspired now to get rid of that crap. I also have, I don't know, 24 pairs of jeans. Do I really need all that?
No, you need to.
Yeah. So,
but then imagine taking that same attitude, and it becomes contagious, because once you clean your wardrobe, you're gonna start looking around the whole house, and you're gonna probably going to all the drawers and going to all the rooms. But then it's gonna go even further. You're gonna go through your entire. You are gonna end up doing an audit of your life.
Yeah.
You are gonna end up doing an audit of your diet. You're gonna go to your to all your cupboards, and you are gonna end up doing an audit of like, well, do I still eat this food, or is this from the X diet that I did years back? So cleaning all of that stuff, and moving is perfect. So I move twice a year, so I have to clean up all the fridges. I have to clean up everything. It gets down to 0, which is perfect because you stock up with fresh food. I was just at the farmer's market here before we jumped on the call, and just got a whole bag of fruit and vegetables, and I'm happy, and that's all I need for the week. And so again, going back to the no process food, and minimal is better, because I find that we have so much. Again, it goes back to the over complexity of our lives. So when you actually have less, you end up doing more with it, just like with the clothes. If you have 3 clothes, or not 3, but let's say 10 pieces of tops and bottoms, then it's 1 of 10 versus, or I have 30, I don't know which one to choose. It's the exact same thing with movement. It's the exact same thing with diet. And it's from a health coaching perspective too. When you talk with people, most people know intrinsically what they need to do. It's ingrained in their DNA. They just don't want to commit to it because they want an easy solution. They want an easy answer. And push-up is a push-up is a push-up. I don't care what gadgets we come up with, a push-up is still a push-up. It's the same thing with the wardrobe. You need 3 pieces that are going to be like,
cover your body.
They're going to work for 90% of the occasion. That's your push-up.
Yeah. Well, so, I mean, like we're talking about clothing, it's a metaphor for just the idea of simplifying, which is really a great topic for coaches to consider with their clients. I mean, I'm a little biased because my whole health coaching company is called Eat Simple, and I'm all about simplifying. But from an entrepreneurial standpoint, because a lot of people listening are toying with the idea of going into business for themselves. So this is that hedonistic treadmill. And this is what we're kind of talking about here. I need more. I have to earn more so I can buy more, so I can be more, so I can have a higher profile, so I can be more fancy. Like, it's this treadmill. You'll never, ever have enough. And I think why this is important is because if you're going to branch into entrepreneurship in any category, health coaching or anything, dolphin training, the old example that I always throw in there, it doesn't matter what kind of entrepreneur you're going to be. What we hear a lot is people like, how am I going to make it? How am I going to afford to pay my bills? How am I going to replace my income? How am I going to? And it's like, that's such a nuanced question, because it's like, well, first of all, do you need to make as much money as you think you do? Let's get clear on that. Like, if you scaled it right back to brass tacks and the essentials and got off that treadmill, that hedonistic treadmill, let's just get really clear about how much you actually need to make it, how much you actually want to work. Because I don't know about anybody else listening, but one of the reasons why I went into business for myself is because I got tired of working for other people. I don't want to work for anybody else. I want to work for myself on my own time. And that may or may not bring in the same consistent paycheck that I had when I was working for the man, but the trade-off is great. And probably I don't need to make as much as I thought I did. I don't know if this is landing, but I think that for somebody exploring entrepreneurship, and before we get scared about not making enough. It's like, but how much do you really need to make if you scaled it right back to your essentials?
Yeah, very, very good question. Very good point. I mean, being an entrepreneur is the worst thing ever and the best thing ever. I would never trade it because I grew up with this entrepreneurial spirit in me. I grew up in a communist country where I couldn't be an entrepreneur. And so I started one of the first private enterprises back when I was 17, running windsurfs at the Black Sea in Bulgaria, because I wanted to have my own business while all my friends were, at the prom. I was back in bed because I wanted to get up in the morning and start my own business. It comes with a lot of sacrifices at the same time. So a lot of people want to get into business, and this is where I think the hustle comes in, right? A lot of people want to get into business in the first place for that freedom and flexibility. It sounds really nice. You work from home, you make your coffee, you spend time with your kid. It has that flexibility. It gives you freedom. You can go on vacation. You can work from your phone, from the beach. It sounds so great. At the same time, you end up working alone for the most part, which is great to have all these podcasts and all these communities where we can connect, because we're all working from our homes in our pajamas and look nice from the bottom up. and then you end up trying to learn so many skills, which is completely impossible, that you're getting all stressed out. And then you think that you're going to make millions because all of these people that are promoting hustle culture is, work harder when your competitors are asleep, you work, just go get it. And this is exactly a place where we need to realize that going into business, it's very, very, very hard. It's not for everyone. All of this, like, you need to go start your own business. You know what? It's not for everyone. So what's happening is entrepreneurship is actually dying in America, and the stats are showing that it's actually dying. Productivity is actually decreasing with all this hustle. We're actually wasting about 22 hours in distractions every week. So productivity is decreasing, happiness is decreasing. And in the meantime, we're all hustling. We're spending the most money at Black Friday ever in the second day of history of the US. So we're hustling, we have side hustles, so we make all this money to go spend all this money, which we just did for a circle, back to the simplifying. But entrepreneurship is not for everybody. No. And yes, being very realistic with how much money you need to make. So and taking into consideration taxes and taking into consideration your expenses, because you are going to have expenses, and taking into consideration the fact that you probably have to, hire a nanny, because being at home with your kid is not going to let you work.
Right.
So you still need to commit for some hours at work, and being very realistic with setting up some boundaries between work and life, because this working from the kitchen table turns into this 24/7. And that's how a lot of people just can't stop working, because I still haven't made my million and I want to, retire. So the way I look at this is, how much money do you really need is a very, very good question. And so taking a look at your expenses and your revenue.
Well, your desires for a certain lifestyle too. Like, we don't need to live a minimalist lifestyle, but be just being honest with what you really want. Being
very honest with it, and what are you comfortable with, and being very honest from a perspective of what can you sacrifice to get that business growing, because there will be sacrifices along the way, and not getting so wound up in that trap of up to the point of losing your freedom and losing your flexibility, because then you end up being miserable. And then you might as well be working for somebody else.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about this in the last 2 years, we talked about this in our masterclass. I did a whole little session on understanding kind of the finances, on being like, know your number is kind of what I called it. Right. And I tell my own story when I had to go from finance, where I made a lot of money, but was miserable and wanted to be able to make this change. My husband and I sat down together, and what do we, so where are our values? Where are we spending money that we really don't need to spend, and they're really not in line with what's important to us anyway. Right. And then I realized part of the reason I was spending so much money was because of the job I had and the environment I was in and the people that I saw and the image that you need to project. Right. And now on this side, as a health coach and a gym owner, I'm into fitness. I just wear like gym clothes all day. And half the time my hair's in a like ponytail on top of my head, you know, so I don't need anywhere near that kind of stuff. And when I realized and I let go of that, I have to replace my income to, all right, how am I going to get to that number? How am I going to back into that? Like one modality of coaching does not have to do that. I can cobble that income together. Aaron talks about this too, right? I can find different revenue streams that all roll up into this number. And what I haven't figured out yet though is to do this in a way where I don't feel like I'm always busy. So, you know, because of kind of how this is structured. And again, part of the reason I'm moving is to get out of a lot of this. I'm selling my gym and we want a more simple lifestyle and all that. So once I move, hopefully this is better, and that's what I'm committed to. But, you know, I guess the question is, how do you work with maybe a client who, from a health perspective, part of their issue is this constant hustle, the constant stress, and maybe walking them through that same inventory, right? That audit. Yeah,
I mean, I have a framework that I walk through with my clients, because everybody's going to be different, and every lifestyle is going to be different. Every desire is going to be different. And now, mind you, I walked away from making 7 figures to start back to a startup, to Unhustle. I am not making the same money with Unhustle than I used to make. So there's a lot of letting go, and there's a lot of ego and mindset and all of that plays into the picture. A lot of letting go of the comparisons, letting go of certain things. But am I happier right now? Absolutely. So the framework is basically, the very first one is figuring out what is your bravery and what is your courage level, and how can you shift your perspective from where you are at the moment to where you want to be. Because if you're in that constant hustle, do you want to stay in that constant hustle? Do you actually want to have a life? And if you want to have a life, what needs to happen for what needs to change for that to happen? So shifting your perspective about what society tells us, about what your friends are doing, about all these comparisons, about, you know, having the maybe the life that is portrayed on us as being normal, maybe it's not what you actually need and desire. So that's the very first step. The second one is, we already talked about, is the simplifying, and doing a really good inventory of what you can change, modify from a work and a life perspective, so that you open up a little bit more time to pursue your passion project, or to, you know, connect with your purpose and do some other hobby. Or maybe you could want to continue working somewhere while you're building your health coaching business. You know, it doesn't have to be all jump both feet in. I mean, it could be very gradual steps. And it's something that I actually did when I first started my digital marketing agency. I built it while I had a full-time job. I built it as a side hustle until I was ready to commit and go full-time with it. So it doesn't have to be, you know, cold turkey, and that's what I'm doing. So I kind of put all of this into the simplifying perspective. And then, again, focusing on your well-being, which is a lot of health coaches come into that area. It's like mental health, it's digital health, it's taking time to unplug. So you can get a little bit more clarity into what you're doing. Then the next step is what brings you joy, and how can you create joy, or how can you do things that bring you joy on a day-to-day basis. So you realize that fitness is what you're passionate about. So you went from the finance area to the fitness area, and you probably feel more fulfillment at the end of the day. So if somebody is wanting to start a business, I would say don't start it for the money, start it for the passion. Because if you're starting it for the money, that is very short-lived. And if you start for the passion, I think the one thing that Unhustle stands up to in the hustle culture is, I'm not doing this as a sprint. I'm doing it for the rest of my life. This is who I am. This is my DNA. And I passionately believe in it so much that I don't care if I don't make any money. I'm starting a movement that I'm going to leave my legacy with. And at some point in time, I know it's going to make money, but that's not my goal. My goal with Unhustle is to change people's minds and save souls and save lives, because I don't know if you have some friends, but I have friends that have, passed away like in their 50s, and it makes you realize, life is too short. I mean, I know it sounds like a cliche, but it's true. So why are we hustling for, I don't, I think it's, we're going back to the materialistic, to the boundaries, to, I can tell you about why we hustle, but I wanted to finish the framework. So once you start doing things that bring you joy, to me, I find a lot of joy even working on my business. So, but I still find time to do other things, work on hobbies or go and exercise, connect with friends. The final step is again that purpose piece, and what is your why, and how are you different from everybody else. And that's the one thing I actually work with some health coaches as well on how, because I feel that a lot of health coaches don't have, they're certified in how to coach, but they're not certified, or they're not certified, but they're not trained in how to actually start a business.
Right.
And to me, that comes back to your why, to your story. Why are you in this in the first place? And why should I connect with you? So I don't know, you probably know how many health coaches are in the country right now. I had no idea when I first got into the Human Potential Institute, thinking, I've never heard of a coach. I don't know what a coach does. What does a coach do? Well, now I know what a coach does, but I realized that all these coaches have no idea how to market themselves.
Right.
And that is a huge, huge opportunity and a challenge at the same time. I mean, they don't know how to create a website or how to capture people's email addresses, or all they know is how to coach. But how do you build that brand? How do you put yourself out there? There's a lot of skills that come with it. But all of this can be wrapped up into what is your why. Why are you in this in the first place? And if you can get that story out and that why out and be consistent with it, then you'll find more people that would believe your story. You're probably finding people that are had a serious career and want to get more into the wellness area, and they're attracted to you. So that's kind of my framework that I take people through from a Unhustle perspective.
That's great.
Yeah,
it's really cool.
It's a great framework.
So there's a couple things to sort of break down there that I was kind of rolling in my head as you were sharing the framework. So gosh, there's so many things I just want to unpack. Like I really do. But let's start here. So I'm going to start at the bottom, because you say like the fourth step of your framework is like find out what brings you joy, which I think is just a really cool exercise. Like, man, make a list. I actually, this is a really weird example, very weird example, so bear with me. But when I was younger and I was single, I partook in online dating. Okay, so I did online dating. This is before like Tinder. This is like back in the day, like, Lava Life and eHarmony. So I'm really Match.com. Yeah. Anyways, one of these online dating platforms had you make a list of the traits and characteristics you love in people, just in people. So like optimism and like adventure, whatever. It doesn't have to be your romantic partner, but traits you love in people. The flip side, which I thought was an incredibly interesting exercise, was also make a list of traits that you struggle to like in people, that you dislike in people.
Yeah.
So just thinking about this, like when you think about what brings you joy, is it worthwhile to also think about what doesn't bring you joy?
Oh, absolutely.
The reason I asked that is because you kind of finished by saying a lot of coaches who are entrepreneurs who go into business struggle with like, oh, the website, the email list, the marketing. I think it's because that doesn't bring them joy. They don't find any joy in that type of work. So how do we manipulate and massage that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really, really good exercise to do from a life perspective, but also from work perspective. Yeah, put down all the things that you're passionate about and you want to do, and put out all the things that you don't want to do. And the challenge becomes then, okay, you're not making any money. How can you pay to outsource? Right. How can you delegate that? I am living in this right now. I'm living it because I know marketing. Now the question is, does this bring me joy? Can I do it? Sure, I can do it. Is it the best use of my time? No.
Right.
And so that comes back to the conversation we had a little bit earlier. What are you prepared to put in to build that business? You know, do you have a budget that, or do you have a full-time job that can support you while you're building that business? You know, do you have some kind of income, or do you have some kind of investment that you put in the business? Because it's not just, oh, get your health coach certification and off you go in the world and good luck. You know, you are going to need some money to build a website. I know there's tons of options out there that make it so easy and affordable right now. But it depends on how much customization you need. At the same level, I would never put like not having a website as a barrier for not getting into business, not getting certified, and not actually starting to work with people, because you can go to the local coffee shop and find somebody to coach. So not having a website does not prevent you from not working. But what I'm doing is I'm reinvesting a lot of my money back into the business. You know, I make money and I delegate more. I make money and I delegate more.
Yeah. I think the other thing too that jumped out at me is that you kind of touched on this earlier. Lots of like business coaches are out there pimping the make 6 figures, make 7 figures, make 47 figures or whatever. It's like, we talked to a gal last week or so. Her episode will be would have been released a few weeks before your episode. This is confusing because we're like in the future and then we're talking about long story short, her whole business, she's a business coach that focuses on helping coaches build that happy little practice, like the just enough practice. This is just enough. I don't need 7 figures or 6 figures. I can be content with like a really high 5-figure job, or, you know, and it was about kind of like balancing the income you need with the time you want to spend. People are forgetting about the currency of time. That's one of the reasons why the Unhustle movement is triggering me, because like the currency of time is a thing that I let slip. And I think about my like 20s and 30s where I just worked my ass off, the best decades of my life, they're gone.
Right.
So now it's fun, which is cool, because I'm going to live to be 111. So it's fine. I have lots of time left, but I definitely look back on that time with regret. And part of it was because I was chasing this big paycheck that for me never materialized. Now for both you ladies, you're like, oh, we made a lot of money. And then we were able to leave that and do this. And it's like, for people who are listening, who didn't make a lot of money, who don't have tons of money in the bank and tons of equity in a house, or just kind of starting out, that's a lot scarier to consider. Like if you're coming from a pretty middle class income and you're like, oh, this is pretty safe. I can't take any less than this. This is kind of at rock bottom right now, income wise. It's a much scarier concept, but also what's an equally scary concept is like your whole life passing you by. And that's just such a difficult paradigm.
We just went back to step 1 in the Unhustle framework, which is the whole courage piece. And I didn't make that much money. I mean, I made good money, but I wouldn't say like I put a whole bunch of money in the bank and said, okay, that's it. No. I've never had money in my life. So I built I would say, a good life in America, but it's been a life that I built on my own. And again, it comes back to, I realized quickly in my life that if I had moved to San Francisco or New York or any one of these places and chase that marketing career, I would be making a lot more money. It will also come with a lot more headaches, really, and a very different lifestyle. So I actually just stayed in the mountains. You know, I moved from San Diego to Tahoe, but anyway, we're getting down a different story. We just went back with what you were talking about. It is a very scary thing. So we just went back to the courage and the bravery. And this is what helps for people to do as an exercise. This is where connecting with their values is in getting them really, really grounded in their values takes that fear away. Just understanding why you're doing what you're doing. And that's why I said, don't get into a business to make money, get into a business because you're passionate about it, because you want to help other people, because you've lived that story and you want to share your journey with people. As opposed to, I'm just going to get into business to make money. And the lady that is helping health coach entrepreneurs make, just enough money, that's a great concept, because I don't know about you, but I'm sick and tired of seeing all these ads on social media. It's like, make $30,000 with your online course, build it in 7 days. I mean, a lot of this is not realistic for a lot of people because there are issues, there's technology and setup, and a lot of people are very afraid of getting on camera and talking. That all of this comes back to getting grounded in your value and knowing that you're not doing that business for yourself, but you're doing it to help other people. Mm-hmm. And why should you hold back from helping other people?
Yeah, I would love to dig a little bit more into this courage and bravery piece, because I 100% agree with Erin. You have folks who never really got there, have always sort of lived on the edge, paycheck to paycheck, and the scarcity mindset, money mindset is terrible. And then you also have folks that have made a lot of money but are spending every freaking dime. That was very common in my industry, right? They've got very big houses with huge mortgages, expensive cars, huge vacations. And in the meantime, their family is used to this lifestyle, and they are almost like, well, it's not fair to my family to not have to take them to Hawaii every summer. You know what I mean? The whole mindset thing is just messed up, but it's finding the courage to, and so I heard you say it, like, if you're really connected to your values, a lot of that fear goes away. Can you just speak a little bit more into kind of what that feels like and how you come to arrive there?
Sure. So let's take the family that goes to Hawaii once a year as an example. And dad's working in high tech, and he goes to Hawaii for a week, and he feels all proud that he can bring the family to, a 5-star hotel, and they can go fishing and they can go snorkeling. But at the same time, every waking minute of his life on that vacation is on his phone. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he's really not present with his family. Now, I just happen to know that I'm just playing that from a client I just work with. And so what that person told me, a very, very successful person, and he's not a millennial, he's not in the, 20 something. He's a very successful person, serial entrepreneur, has a hard time disconnecting from technology, has a hard time saying, I'm going to unplug and actually go on vacation with my family and actually be present with them. And so does the family really want you to take him there? Or does the family really want to have a dad? The one thing I ask this person to do is to write his, to write or to think and let me know what would people say at his funeral. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And none of this, I'm a very highly successful businessman came out. I've started multiple businesses came out, and none of this came out. What came out is I'm a family man, and everything I've done, I did for my family. So does your family really, if you sit them down and have an honest conversation, do they really want to have that vacation in Hawaii, or do they want to have a dad that is there for them? And is the world really going to stop rotating if you don't check your email while you're on vacation?
Right.
So again, it comes back to what are your values, but knowing your values is an exercise I didn't do until quite later in my life. And it took me a while to really get there. And the coaching program definitely helped with getting more clear on that. Your values also going to change throughout the year. So it's a good exercise to do every once in a while. They're not going to be the same values in your 20s as they are in your 50s. Mm-hmm. And so knowing your values is a very, very critical step, because that's the easiest way, I think, to find that courage in you and to sit down and have that honest conversation first with yourself and then with your family and say, would you rather me, travel and work 80 hours a week and never be here, and so I can take you on that week to Hawaii when I'm still not there with you? Or would you rather me start a business, become a health coach, be healthy, be alive and well for many more years so I can play with your grandkids? I mean,
yeah.
Totally.
I wrote this down as you were telling that story. Like, whenever anybody says that, what are they going to say at your funeral? It's like, damn, right. That's so true.
Yeah.
So I wrote that down. I'm like, I got to start working on my eulogy. We got to start working on our eulogies. What are people, how are we going to be remembered in our lives? But one thing that always springs to mind when we talk about this and these examples that we're using of these folks who work hard so they can get to the beach and, show their family a good time while they're on their phones. this whole, so we talked earlier about the hedonistic treadmill, but then there's this like when then treadmill, and this really helps me because it's like, for example, my husband works in an industry where he can make good money, but he has to be gone for a long time. He's just always gone, and so it's like, wouldn't you just like to be, I say, wouldn't you just like to be at home? Like, don't you miss being at home? He's like, yeah, but once I make such and such amount of money, then I can stay home. And once I make such and such a money, then we can get that place on the beach. Once we make such and such a money, then we can buy that acreage. And we can, it's like, when I make this money, then I can do this. When I have this, then I can achieve that. And that's a struggle that I personally get into as well, because even when you were talking earlier about the things that help create this Unhustle life, like, you know, some meditation and connecting with friends and getting off technology and getting into nature. It's like, yeah, I'll do that once I have enough money in the bank. Then I'm going to go get a beach house and I'm going to go into, but until then I have to just kind of hustle. Like it's this whole when then piece. It's very hard to extract yourself from.
We see this in health coaching too. We see this with our clients, you know, when insert whatever event I'm going to, this is very personal to me too, because I hear it from my brother all the time, who easily needs to lose 100 pounds. And he's like, well, right now KJ is my priority. And when I don't have to worry about him so much, then I can focus on myself. Or from clients who just, you know, I'll start exercising when I've lost the weight, or I'm in better shape, and then I'll do this. And we see this, there's a parallel to what our clients are going to be telling us as health coaches as well.
Yeah, let me tell you a story. I get it as well all the time. Mm-hmm. And it's that success trap, or it's that illusion, is that false illusion that we tell ourselves. We tell that ourselves because it's actually easier. It's more comfortable when you stay in that space. Mm-hmm. and you dream and you talk about it, but you're not really serious about it, because if you are really serious about it, you'll do something about it. I worked with a couple, and so they're in their 40s. So I have very different generations that I work with. And the couple were startup, you know, very successful tech entrepreneurs. And they burned out. You know, both of them were working on the same project. They had a team, they burned out. And Mel ended up creating a PowerPoint. This is so funny. She actually created a PowerPoint and set her husband down in the living room and went through the whole PowerPoint with him and ended with, if not now, then when. And basically the idea is, and they had been following us when we started, you know, our transformation, our change, when we changed our life, and they're going, why can't we do this? And they ended up actually, so she ended with, if not now, then when? And he actually said yes. So they put all of their company on remote work environment. They purchased a van and they went and visited all the national parks in the Western states over a 3-month period as a test to see, can we actually do this? And, you know, everything worked fine. They were able to work from the road. The company, their employees at first didn't believe him. Like, you're doing what? Like, neither one of you two are going to be in the company? And they said, no, you can actually work from wherever you want to as well. You don't have to come to the office. So it was a little experiment that they did. So what I'm saying with that is, it doesn't have to be, you know, that big of a jump. If you're that scared, like, well, I'll do it when Johnny goes to college. Well, just do something little, just to get a taste for it. You know, you don't have to like quit your job. You can take a sabbatical, you know, or God forbid, take 2 weeks off vacation. Right. Yeah. Because 6 out of 10 Americans don't take their vacations. So maybe take 2 weeks out of vacation and see what that feels like, and just disconnect from your phone.
One of the analogies that I was thinking while you're kind of finishing that thought was like, every now and then I'll recognize that I need to get out into nature, because I mean, you can't disregard the research on being in nature, being in direct sunlight, all that great health benefits. And, you know, so whatever, I live in a very cold place. It's cold 7 months of the year. That excuse aside, sometimes I'll say, okay, you know what? I'm going to go and get into nature. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to pack up the dog, get in the car. I'm going to drive to the mountains. I'm going to find a good hiking trail. I'm going to go for a hike. I'll stop at the river. We'll throw some stone. When I could, I could just go outside my door and walk around the yard.
You got a whole
Like,
acre there, girlfriend.
right. I have an acre, so I have literally no excuse, but it's like, this reminds me of this stupid book, Diaries of a Shopaholic. Okay. I'm giving you a lot of weird analogies, but in this book, Diaries of a Shopaholic, I think that's what it was called. Something like that. This woman was spending all her money and she decided she was going to get on a budget. So she went out and bought herself a nice ledger, very expensive leather bound ledger, and a nice designer pen so she could keep track of her budget. It's like, no, you said, I wrote it down somewhere on my thing here. Talking about it and doing it are two different things. So like talking about getting out into nature and planning a big outing to the mountains, that's not just do it.
Things.
Go do it. Just if you want to get on a budget, do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And this is why I'm walking the talk of the Unhustle lifestyle. And I've designed my life to where I can say, I'm actually doing this. This is what I do, because, there's a lot of people kind of talking about it, but not actually doing it. And if not now, then when? Why can't I, have a mini retirement in my life? And I'm not retired, I'm actually working from here anyway. So, but why can't I combine both? And I think a lot of people just get so set in it's a routine, and they're afraid of change. And it's basically that's what it comes down to, it's change. And so this is where when I work with clients, I give them some little hacks where they can test their courage and their bravery. I mean, the easiest one to do is take a cold shower in the morning.
Oh yeah.
So, do a bit of Wim Hofing, right? Take a cold shower in the morning. It builds your courage, and courage is just a skill. You can, it's a muscle you can build. But sitting there in the hot shower and saying, okay, now I'm going to turn into cold, and actually doing it.
Oh man,
two different things. So it's great. It's great. I started doing it a while back, and actually it increases your willpower. So if you're debating like, am I going to go outside with my dog and go in the snow, and you will see that it's going to get easier, because you say, well, actually being in that uncomfortable situation, it's really good for us, right? From all kinds of perspectives. But just being able to put your body in a little bit uncomfortable a situation, I think it's so good. And it's the exact same thing we're doing with our lifestyle and with our work and being entrepreneurs. You're getting into an uncomfortable situation. Of course, you're going to say, I'll wait. That's just human nature. You don't want to, it's that reptilian brain, right? It's like going, whoa, hang on, this is scary. Why do you want to rock the boat? I mean, you went from a finance career and making a ton of money to being in the fitness world. I mean, that's a scary step for a lot of people to take, because all of a sudden you're going, my security blanket is disappearing. What am I doing? How am I going to make this work? Am I being crazy? Am I doing the right thing? I mean, there's a lot of questions. So how do we quiet all these questions in your mind? How do we quiet them? By being present. Just
That's
being
huge.
present.
Yeah. What's interesting is, I made a ton of money at the time, but what's interesting is at the time it didn't feel that way. Right. And comparatively speaking to what I'm making now, but what's interesting is, even though I'm making significantly less, I'm making enough. Like, I'm not worried about paying my mortgage. I'm not worried about, I spend an obscene amount of money on food, right? But I'm spending less money on other things. I really, the last time I really went out and bought new clothes was a long time ago. I don't need it anymore. I'm not going out and, I kid you not, ladies, I have an entire cowboy boot. I have 13 pairs of cowboy boots because I love them. They're super comfortable. It's like a collection for me, but really, like, looking back, I love them and I wear them all the time and they do bring me joy. So I probably will not sell them. I love them. But to me, I think looking back at it now, this was just me rewarding myself for being horribly unhappy. And I had to make that kind of money. Otherwise, the dang job wasn't worth it.
Right. Yeah. And I completely understand where you're coming from, because I used to be the same way. I mean, I would spend 16 hours on the computer and then go online and do online shopping at 1 a.m. in the morning because I needed a break.
Right. It created that for me. Yeah. And looking at it now, eventually the money wasn't enough either. Wasn't worth it.
Which is where that purpose part comes in. It's like, what's your purpose and why why are you in this life, and what is your journey, and what is your bigger purpose? How do you want to serve the world back? And because that's going to make you so much more happier than chasing the money. And so being comfortable in the uncomfortable situation, it's not easy though. It's not easy for a lot of people. It's going to be a big step because we've been conditioned that way, right? From human nature, from having that, safety to, the money and the consumerism. I mean, it's a big journey, but it's having your eye on where you want to go and then being able to let it go of that goal, I think is the most key element on that path. Saying, okay, I need $100,000 a year, to quit my job, but then not being so attached to that final goal, because that's your ego. So you want to actually quiet that ego and just do what you need to do to get there, and not be so focused on the joy.
I think what we've talked about here today, although it maybe sounded like a very strange winding journey, because we talked about like wardrobe and cowboy boots and vacationing in Hawaii, but I actually think this type of stuff is foundational to entrepreneurship, because it really does come down to bravery, courage. What do you love? What don't you love? What brings you joy? What doesn't bring you joy? What's your purpose? And wealth consciousness comes into play here too. We talked about that quite a lot. So I just want to button that up and kind of remind listeners that everything we've talked about here is kind of where you need to, in a sense, start before you decide to, maybe not before you decide to launch a business, but when it starts to bubble up as an idea, when you start to want to step into this purpose-driven life, these are all the really the tough questions you're going to want to ask yourself, but treat it like a personal development exercise rather than a chore, right? Because it's exciting, truthfully. So I think just in the interest of time, Milena, if you could tell us, like, who do you work with? Who are your clients? How do you work with people, and how can they find you if they want to dig in a bit more to what you do?
Certainly, and that was a very good wrap up on our whole conversation, which we really jumped all over the place. And I would say one thing with that wrap up is finding somebody that you could work with, somebody that's walked that path, like having a mentor, having a coach. I think it's going to be so critical. Like having you ladies, I haven't checked out your mastermind yet, but getting some kind of objective feedback. A mentor or somebody that knows how to do it is going to be key, because sometimes trying to figure these things on your own will take so much time and so much energy that it's going to be a frustrating journey. So definitely find somebody to work with. Yep. Now, who I work with is it's a little bit over the board in terms of age group, but it's basically entrepreneurs, it's leaders, it's companies. I work with startup environments. I work with executives. It's a little bit of both. I do one-on-one coaching. I do group online coaching. I do retreats. I do corporate workshops. I do some online training. So a little bit of everything, really. And my company's, the website is unhustle.com. And it will be great if people find me on Instagram at unhustle and tell me what they learned about this journey and how I can help them, because I'll be more than happy to point them in the right direction.
Yeah,
I love that.
Yeah,
I love that.
We really do need to unhustle. And just as a little sidebar, the reason why I was so triggered by this conversation is I have been trying to start this hashtag campaign. I've been starting, mine was hustle just enough. It was like hustle just enough. And I put this out there, but I got to tell you something. I'm not walking that talk. That's fake. That's me being fake. I'm putting, hustle just enough. Life is too short. You're going to get burnt out if you don't manage it. But I've been talking about it, but not doing it. So I want to just thank you for that reality check. Because to be honest with you, we hear this a lot from a lot of our successful guests who come here, who talk to us, who are successful coaches, successful business leaders. That's the consistent message is I just started doing the stuff that needed to get done rather than talking about it. And we need to hear that every day. If it helps, eventually it'll stick. So thank you very much for just giving us that real talk.
Thank you.
I mean, to piggyback on that, like doing is different than talking, and kind of going back to some of what Aaron was, this treadmill of when, then, and so if there's something that you want to accomplish that you feel you can't do now, what can you do? what smaller step is going to kind of move you in that direction, right? I mean, so if launching this big health coaching practice and leaving the job is not doable now, what is the one step? Is it enrolling in a course in the first place because you haven't even done that? Is it reading a couple of books? Is it, okay, I graduated, now I'm going to just get out and talk to people, right? Find an activity, something to kind of move you in that direction so that you can, you're in constant motion and constant energy, and do it in a way, because I would imagine kind of this idea of simplify too goes to having some sort of focus.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Focus is definitely in there. And if you're considering, and if you're not sure, do I want to get into this career or not? I mean, the best way to do is find someone who's already in that career and see if you can shadow them or just spend a date with them to see all the challenges, just to see a normal day of what they're going through. And see if you like it or not. Because a lot of people may be like, oh, that's not what I really envisioned what it's like.
Yep.
That's great advice.
Wonderful. Wow, this has been so fun. This has been so fun. Thank you so much for just lighting a fire. I'm going to go home and cook my wardrobe.
Me too, man. I was really looking forward to it, and it's exactly what I expected. I got everything out of it that I was hoping to in this interview. So thank you for that.
Oh, you're so welcome. And thank you so much for having me. And send me a photo of your wardrobe once you do it. Tag me on Instagram.
Okay, I'll send you a before and after.
There's your accountability.
There you go. You got it. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ladies.